Welcome, everyone. I now call the May 20th, 2025 regular City Council meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. At this point, we will take a moment to take roll call of the council members by position number. Please say here when the clerk calls your name.
Councilmember Zorns?
Here.
Mayor Thompson?
Here.
Councilmember Alders?
Here.
Councilmember Kurd?
Here.
Councilmember Mankey? Councilmember Dodd?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Alcabra?
Here.
All present with the exception of Councilmember Mankey.
Thank you. Before we continue with the rest of the agenda, I'd like to reiterate some guidelines. For remote meeting attendees, please speak clearly and pause frequently. Mute your microphone when not speaking. And for council attending remotely, use the raise hand feature when you wish to speak. Are there any changes to the meeting agenda? No, seeing none. I guess we don't have a public engagement opportunity today. Fred taking it easy on me. That's for you, Eileen. The city has accepted public comments in writing as well as sign up for those who wish to speak at tonight's meeting. Written comments submitted to the city clerk no later than 3 p.m. today were forwarded to all city council members and are part of the record. When the clerk calls your name, you will have 3 minutes to speak. Please note that council will receive your input, but we do not engage in discussion of these topics. Staff will make notes of items requiring follow-up. City Clerk.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We did receive written comment from Jake Bailey. They're also signed up to speak, but council received copies of the written comment and they will be added to the minutes for tonight's meeting. First that I have signed up to speak is Aaron Mangon. Hi, Aaron. If you press the button on the mic to talk, and once your 3 minutes starts, there's going to be a green light on the podium. When you have 1 minute left, the light's going to flash, and at 30 seconds left, it'll turn yellow.
Well, thank you for having me tonight. I want to raise an issue up on Ross Road, just past the new Medora apartments. Prior to those apartments being built, both sides of that road were marked no parking. During the construction, no parking signs were taken down. We now have cars parking on that road. And in the last month, we've had 3 kids almost get hit. We've had 2 bikes ran over on the way to schools, on the way to catch the middle school buses, to a point where parents are now blocking traffic so their kids can cross the street to get to school safely. I don't think that's the image that Bothell wants, where kids do not feel safe walking through their own neighborhood. Cars are parking there to the point where we cannot maintain, the grass isn't being cut by the city anymore. You can't see around the corner, and it is an extremely narrow road. Down where it's wider in front of the apartment, the city put up no parking signs. I have emails from the city engineers, traffic engineers, saying definitely should not be any parking. I've emailed them 18 times, and no one has gone up there to look at it. I've emailed operations. They said this has to be handled by the city council. We've emailed the police about the speeding. No one has gone up there to look at it. The neighbors are looking at putting in their own speed bumps because no one is taking this issue seriously up there. People aren't letting their kids walk to junior high bus stops. They're not letting their kids walk to Maywood Elementary anymore. I grew up in the city of Seattle, and this is less safe than the narrow streets in Ballard were. We moved out here to get away from that, and it's only gotten worse since those apartments have been built. I'm not saying it's just them, but people are parking there, and we cannot see around the corner. It's not if a kid is going to get hit, it is when a kid is going to get hit. That almost happened this morning. I was walking to go get coffee, watched the car slam on its brakes as a group of kids were crossing the street to go catch the junior high school bus. Our kids should not have to deal with that. They deal with enough stuff, not have to worry about getting hit. while walking through a neighborhood because somebody took down no parking signs and no one will go put them back up. All we want are no parking signs. We don't want a sidewalk. We understand that. We will go buy the signs. We just need the signs put up. The neighbors are raising money to do something about this themselves. That's how frustrated everybody is at this point. And nobody from the city is responding to anybody at this point. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Next, I have Jake Bailey. Jake, go ahead and press that button to talk.
Hello, I'm Jake Bailey. My wife, Tiffany, and I have lived in Bothell for 6 years. Our home is bordered by North Creek Forest and a greenbelt tract with a wetland. See photos 1 and 2 and map 1 in the handout. Also, please forgive my crude map making. I'm doing my best to illustrate the areas we're talking about, but I am not a surveyor. It's not always easy being next to a wetland. It breeds mosquitoes in the summer, and we had some water intrusion in our daylight basement a couple years ago. But we are nature lovers, and we love it despite the drawbacks. In February, we met our new neighbor, Juan Medina, because we saw his landscapers clearing bushes in the greenbelt. We went over with a bottle of wine to introduce ourselves and to ask what his plans were. We told him this was a wetland and a greenbelt tract, and he assured us that the clearing would stop at his property line. But before 9 a.m. the next morning, a large section of the greenbelt had been cleared. See photo 3 and map 2. In April, Juan began building a retaining wall, filling in the part of the wetland which lay on his property. See photos 4 and 5. We attended a wetlands panel at Cascadia College, where we heard from David Bain, biologist and VP of Friends of North Creek Forest. He talked about how even small wetlands play an important role in filtering out pollutants like tire dust, which accumulate in North Creek and kill salmon fry. We spoke to him after the panel and described our situation, and he encouraged us to go to the city. We did, but planning insisted that this area was not a wetland and couldn't be protected as one until we personally paid for a delineation study. So we reached out to Friends of North Creek Forest for a referral to a qualified wetland professional. In the meantime, last Wednesday, Juan's crew began digging trenches through the greenbelt to install French drains. See photos 7 and 8. We contacted the city on Wednesday, but they only informed us that no permit was required for this work. Friends of North Creek Forest referred us to ecological consultant Sarah Cook, who wrote, "The trenching your neighbor has done is illegal. The area is clearly a wetland. Any staff person who does wetlands for the city will know just from your photo." See photos 6 and 7. We reached out to the city again with this information on Thursday and again on Friday, asking them to stop the ongoing work and protect the wetland. We were told they'd look into it, but did not hear back. By the end of Friday, the drains were completed and buried, and the stream on our property had disappeared. We think the city made a mistake by issuing a permit to fill a wetland and by allowing it to be drained, and we think the city should mitigate the loss of wetland. We came to ask you to direct staff to investigate the situation and mitigate the damage, or if that isn't possible, at least institute changes to make sure it doesn't happen again. The last page in the handout is a list of some gaps where changes may be needed, as far as we are able to tell. We hope it's helpful despite our amateur perspective. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Again, council does not respond to comment, but staff has taken note. And I see some council members taking notes too, so.
That's all I have signed up to speak, Deputy Mayor. I do see someone, a remote attendee, with their hand raised, but if I can ask first if anyone in the audience wants to speak? No? Okay, I'm going to bring in our remote attendee. Katie, can you hear us? Katie, you can unmute your mic if you're ready to speak. Not hearing from Katie. That's all I have, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, City Clerk. I keep staring at the mute button, just making sure that she can unmute. It looks like you just paneled her off. So if she comes back, let's see if we can panel her back in. All right, to the report section, and we have a city manager report. City Manager.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and good evening, City Council members, and to the two council members, or the mayor and the council member joining us online, good evening. And yeah, to reiterate, oh, bless you. To reiterate, as the Deputy Mayor just said, I would also note that anyone who was unable to participate remotely would be encouraged to send an email to the City Council as well. That gets the same review as does the comments that we received in writing earlier. Again, those have already been distributed to the appropriate staff for follow-up. Tonight, we do have two formal presentations, and I'll have a quick update following that, depending on time. So first of all, though, I want to open things up with a bit of a celebration and a proud moment in terms of the city both recognizing Public Works Week, which while we didn't have a local proclamation, it's not necessarily needed. It is a nationally recognized week. But also within that, we wanted to share with City Council and the community that the Public Works Department has recently been re-accredited with the American Public Works Association. So to walk you through what all of that means, I'm going to first turn things over to Public Works Director Erin Lenhart. Erin.
Thank you, Kyle. Good evening and happy Public Works Week, Council. The theme of this year's Public Works Week is People, Purpose, and Presence, which highlights ideals that motivate public works professionals to serve in our communities every day. The theme is consistent with our own departmental mission and vision, which is building the foundation for community through meaningful connections and sustainable services. Meeting people's needs is what gives Public Works its sense of purpose. Public works professionals rarely meet those whose lives have been impacted because when things are going right, few realize that Public Works is there. With or without fanfare, Public Works is ever present, working in the background to advance quality of life for all. In honor of Public Works Week 2025, I am very proud to announce our department's re-accreditation by the American Public Works Association. And to speak more about that, I would like to introduce Public Works Administrative Manager Jennifer Fry, who's been our accreditation manager for 2 successful processes, and APWA Region 9 Director Tina Nelson.
Hello. Can you hear me okay? Better?
It doesn't want to come any further.
How's that? Is that better? Okay. We would like to extend our thanks to APWA for developing an accreditation program that promotes excellence in the operation and management of a public works agency, its programs, and employees. Accreditation is designed to assist agencies in the continuous improvement of operations and management by providing a valid and objective evaluation of agency programs, which benefits the public as well as the profession. When Bothell Public Works was first accredited in December 2020, the entire Public Works team worked to develop policies and practices consistent with the best in the industry. This effort revolutionized the way we operate in Public Works, resulting in a robust review and documentation of 411 practices subject to accreditation, as well as countless others that were not subject to the APWA review. Initial accreditation is valid for 4 years, during which time semi-annual updates are required to demonstrate continuous improvement. After initial accreditation, there is a re-accreditation process that builds on the original, encouraging continuous improvement and compliance with newly identified practices. And I will turn it over to Tina to speak to the outcome of that process.
Thank you, Jennifer. Good evening, Mayor, Council, and City staff. I appreciate this invitation, and it's a pleasure to have an opportunity to say a few words. Public Works is my passion, and representing APWA is an honor. One of the privileges of being on the board of directors is to connect with others about Public Works and APWA, including events like this and recognizing exemplary work. Just real quick, so what is APWA? For those of you that don't know. The American Public Works Association was formed in 1937. It's a not-for-profit international organization of more than 32,000 members involved in the field of public works. APWA serves its members by promoting professional excellence and public awareness through education, advocacy, and exchange of knowledge. APWA is headquartered in Kansas City, Missouri, has an office in Washington, D.C., and we have 62 chapters and 97 branches across the United States and Canada. I've been in the profession for 35 years, and serving the public well has always been and always still is my goal. Public Works has many responsibilities, and the ability to serve well comes with a well-organized approach. Accreditation and staying accredited are steps in that direction. It takes an effort to get there, a big effort, but it brings back dividends. I myself work for an accredited association, Kitsap County, and I see first the benefits, but I also very much know the work it takes. Accreditation is the mark of professionalism, indicating a public works agency has made the commitment to continuous improvement in the delivery of public works operations and services in the community it serves. Accreditation recognizes an agency's policies, procedures, and practices which have been evaluated against nationally recognized management practices determined to be appropriate for that specific agency. This re-accreditation is evident that your Public Works team continues to put in the work to be a high-performing agency. Bothell Public Works was awarded re-accreditation in March of 2025, when 129 practices out of those 411 that Jennifer mentioned were re-reviewed by a team of experienced public works professionals from Wisconsin and California. And I'm happy to report that Bothell was determined to be in full compliance. Not only that, but they also had one model practice, which was submitted by the Employee and Technology Services Department, GIS Division. And this practice will be available for other public works departments that are trying to improve on their practices. Over 200 agencies in the United States and Canada have achieved this accreditation. Of those, 5 are cities in Washington: Bainbridge Island, Bellevue, Lake Stevens, Shoreline, and Tacoma. Receiving APWA recognition for engaging in best practices across the board is one of the highest distinctions in the industry. It further reinforces the theme of this year's Public Works Week: people, purpose, presence, which is just now taking place. I want to thank you, the City Council, Mayor and Deputy Mayor, for supporting your department in this work, and for recognizing their staff for setting a great example to those that count on their services, those that live and work in Bothell. I now would like to present the plaque to your director, Aaron Lanehart, to recognize their achievement.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you, Tina. Appreciate it.
And a special thanks to the accreditation manager, Jennifer. Thank you so much. And thank you all for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Tina, for joining us tonight. And we appreciate the commitment that you have to your profession to spend time doing this as well. Next up, we are joined online by our state lobbyist, Shelley Helder. As council will recall, we've spent quite a bit of time focusing on the state legislative agenda, both in preparation for the legislative session, but also during the session itself. And so we're excited to have Shelley to come tonight to help wrap up what has taken place. She'll be focusing particularly on the city council's legislative priorities, but also able to answer questions on some other key bills of interest. With that, I'm going to turn things over to Shelley. And again, in case I don't have a chance at the end, Shelley, thank you very much for your time and support throughout this session.
My pleasure. Well, thank you. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I thank you for the thumbs up. I'm gonna share my screen here and we'll get started. So, I guess I don't need to share, but I am Shelley Helder, and I've had the privilege of representing the city this past session. And I'm here tonight to provide an overview of the legislative session and specifically a report on the outcomes of the city's legislative agenda. So my presentation is going to have three components. First, a summary of the outcomes of the 2025 legislative session, the outcomes of the city's legislative priorities, and then we'll talk about the next steps. So the 2025 session was the first year of the two-year legislative cycle. The first year is always 105 consecutive days. The first year of the biennium is longer because the primary purpose is to adopt the new biennial budgets, and that takes longer to do than the short 60-day session. In addition to adopting the new budgets, the legislature also considers thousands of policy bills. This year, there were 2,387 bills that were introduced, and 433 passed the legislature. And you can see on the screen that the number of bills that were introduced this year was greater than the number of bills introduced in 2019 and 2023. I eliminated 2021 as a data point because that session was completely virtual. But you'll also note that there were fewer bills that passed the legislature this year than those comparable 2 years. So I thought that was an interesting data point, and I think is more of a reflection on the budget situation than anything else. Because this is the first year of the biennium, any bill that did not pass will be automatically reintroduced in 2026. Democrats had a strong majority in both chambers. It was 59 to 39 in the House and 30 to 19 in the Senate. Of the 147 legislators, there were 24 freshman legislators. And that's a pretty high level of turnover. There were also new committee assignments, there were leadership changes, and new policy priorities based on the caucuses and the changes in membership. And then, of course, it goes without saying that 2025 was the beginning of Governor Ferguson's first term in office. So, as you all know, the state has three budgets: the operating, the capital, and the transportation budget. This year's budget negotiations were uniquely difficult. We entered the session facing a $15 billion shortfall over 4 years, and that's one of the largest fiscal challenges the state has faced in over a decade. The shortfall was driven by slowing revenue growth and rising caseloads, and that really influenced every discussion and put many local projects under increased scrutiny. The operating budget is the largest of the three state budgets. It pays for the day-to-day operations of state agencies, colleges and universities, and the public school system. The primary source of funding for the operating budget are state taxes, federal funds, and tuition. The 2025-27 operating budget is $77.8 billion, and it leaves $2.3 billion in reserves. In adopting this budget, the legislature passed bills that generate $4.3 billion in new revenue. The largest contributor of that is an increase to business and occupation tax for some businesses. The capital budget pays for construction, acquisition, and maintenance of state buildings, public school buildings, higher education facilities, public lands, and other assets. It is the smallest of the three budgets and is funded primarily through the sale of bonds. The new capital budget is $7.5 billion, and it leaves $349 million in bond capacity for a supplemental budget. For comparison purposes, the previous biennial budget was $9 billion. So the capital budget this year was significantly smaller than before. The capital budget is the source of funding for local community projects. And the amount that was allocated to that purpose in the new budget is $201 million, roughly $30 million less than what was allocated in the previous biennial budget. Further, the average size of the award for local community projects was $604,000, which is also a reduction relative to the previous budget, which was an average award of $800,000. So I note this just to highlight that the capital budget did not have the same level of capacity as it has had in the past. The final budget, the transportation budget, pays for, of course, transportation activities, designing and maintaining roads, as well as public transit. There was a $1 billion shortfall projected for the 25-27 biennium. And so the transportation budget writers were faced with the option of cutting expenditures, raising new revenue, or both. And in the end, they opted for both. So the 25-27 transportation budget is $15.5 billion. The legislature delayed the timing of projects as a method of limiting expenditures in the near term. And they adopted legislation generating $3.2 billion over the next 6 years. The primary source of revenue for the transportation budget is a 6-cent gas tax. Of that amount, 2.5% is dedicated to counties and 2.5% is dedicated to cities. What that means for cities is $36.2 million over the course of the next 6 years, and that is distributed proportionally on the basis of population. So with all that overview of the higher level summary of what happened, I'm going to shift now to talking about the city's legislative priorities and outcomes. So the city had 5 priorities for the long session. The first priority was to advance the preservation of Shelton View Forest for recreational purposes. The land is currently owned by the Department of Natural Resources, and since it is trust land, the state has a legal obligation to manage it for the trust beneficiaries, which are the public school system. And due to the property's high market value and the statutory obligations, purchasing the property from the state is financially difficult. So this session, we explored the idea of changing the state law to allow DNR land under very narrow conditions to be valued at an assessed rate rather than the market rate. This concept has been used for the transfer of other public properties from other state agencies, but hadn't been applied to DNR land previously. This idea proved to be premature for this legislative session, given the transition in leadership at DNR and the fact that the Shelton View parcels have not yet been nominated for consideration in the Trust Land Transfer Program. The Trust Land Transfer Program was developed back in the 80s to enable DNR to keep special places in public ownership. So while the TLT program exists for the very purpose that we would want to use it for, under the current program criteria, Shelton View Forest is not expected to compete well relative to other properties that apply to the program. Additionally, the program is funded through the state capital budget, and the state has consistently underfunded the recommended list from DNR. So despite not being optimistic about the city's ranking in the TLT program, we learned this session that it is an important, most critical step in the process of finding a solution for the property. So in addition to that, it's going to be important to do outreach to tribal partners and new leadership at DNR. So we've known that this is going to be a longer term priority, and we're going to continue to make progress on this priority over the interim. The second priority was a $1.9 million capital budget request for the Woodcrest Utility Improvement Project. We worked with city staff to complete and submit the formal capital budget application, and that requires a legislative sponsor to be officially considered by the budget writers. The project was supported by all the members of the city's delegation, but Representative Dewar led the delegation with this request. And through ongoing conversations with Representative Dewar and the House Capital Budget Chair, we were successful in securing $1.5 million in the House proposed capital budget. And then that amount was carried forward into the final budget, which is really incredible. Obviously, $1.5 million is not the full amount that was requested, but I just want to highlight that many requests were not funded at all. And 1.5 is more than double, or I guess, yeah, more than double the average award size of $602,000. So this outcome would not have been possible without the diligence and the determination of Representative Dewar, who led on this request. The third priority was a request for the state to structure policies to incentivize multimodal connections in communities that have done the work to increase zoned density. Specifically, the city requested $20 million over the next 6 years to assist with implementation of the citywide bike plan. While there was some progress on this from a policy perspective through the passage of legislation on transit-oriented development, the constraints of the transportation budget meant that there were no new investments in local projects. The TOD bill, House Bill 1491, does establish minimum densities around light rail and bus rapid transit stations. And it includes affordability requirements, parking restrictions, anti-displacement measures, impact fee reductions, and more. The bill creates a grant program to support cities with the infrastructure needed for denser development, but there's no funding for the grant program in the current budget. On the bright side, the Complete Streets program, which is administered by the Transportation Improvement Board and is a really common source of funding for jurisdictions who are wanting to do multimodal improvements, it received a $10 million increase above the previous biennial amounts. So the program total is now $24.6 million, and that is available in grants to local governments through, for the new biennium. The next priority was to support policies that remove barriers to the construction of housing. The legislature passed several bills with this goal in mind, and a complete list of those bills will be hitting your inbox shortly through a comprehensive list of documents that I'll be sharing with you. I'm going to mention just two of the more impactful bills this evening. Senate Bill 5184 establishes statewide limitations on parking minimums for residential and commercial developments. Residential parking is capped at half a space per multifamily dwelling unit, 1 space per single family home, and 2 spaces per 1,000 square feet of commercial development. The bill applies statewide, but it only applies to cities with a population of 30,000 or greater. The second bill is House Bill 1096, and it allows residential lots to be split into lots through a streamlined administrative process. And the goal of the bill is to more efficiently use land in cities to expand middle housing and affordable ownership opportunities. And both of these bills passed with bipartisan support. The final priority was the Bothell Way multimodal project. And we were not requesting new funding this biennium, but we were flagging that in the future there was going to be a need for additional funding. We ended up playing pretty significant defense simply to retain the funding that was previously awarded. The House transportation budget pushed $5 million of the previously awarded $7 million to the future beyond the 2031 fiscal year. So when the House budget was released, we obviously alerted our delegation and we shared concerns with this proposal and the fact that this project, having that funding so far into the future, risked the city's ability to complete the project and the federal funding that's already been secured. Unfortunately, given the, lack of dependability of federal funding, that argument was not as compelling as it has been historically. And every other project in the state was in a similar position as we were, where the funding had been pushed beyond 2031 and they were asking for their funding to be restored. Despite raising new revenue, the legislature simply could not honor all the previously planned expenditures in the upcoming biennium. However, I am pleased to share that rather than being pushed beyond 2031, the $5 million for the Bothell Way multimodal project is allocated in the 27-29 biennium. So it is a 2-year delay beyond what we were anticipating, but at least it's not further out into the future. So in addition to the city's top priorities, you also have a policy manual, and that outlines the city's position on a variety of issues. I want to briefly touch on outcomes from just a few of those topics. Under the topic of community development, the legislature passed House Bill 1403, and that authorizes the use of express warranties and creates implied warranties regarding the quality of materials and construction in a condominium. So the objective of this policy is to increase the frequency of which a construction company chooses to construct condominiums rather than single-family homes. There have been a couple different bills that have passed over the years on this topic, and it sounds like this one is something that will hopefully crack that nut and result in more condominium construction. I spoke on the TOD bill, so I'm going to jump down to the topic of finance. The legislature passed House Bill 1791, which aligns the uses of REIT 1 and REIT 2 revenue and allows REIT to be used towards regional affordable housing projects. This change provides greater flexibility for resources that have historically been heavily constrained. The bill that would have lifted the 1% cap on property tax growth made it to the final week of session, and then the concept died amidst concerns from the governor. Legislators who were already hesitant about the proposal were not willing to vote for a policy that had a high risk of being vetoed. And given the governor's concerns with the policy, honestly, I'm skeptical that it has a path forward in the near term. But I do think that this is something that will remain an outstanding concern for local governments, just given the financial difficulties and constraints that local governments will continue to face. But on a more positive note, despite the difficult budget, the legislature honored its commitment to sharing state revenues, and there were no reductions in the revenues cities received from the state. On the topic of public works, there was an effort to divert the dedicated revenues that go into the public works assistance account. We were successful in killing that concept, so it was not included in the final budget. However, there is a one-time transfer of $288 million from the public works assistance account to the state general fund. This transfer is backfilled with bond capacity from the capital budget. So the Public Works Board has the discretion to use that if needed. And this transfer is not supposed to have any effect on the availability of the Public Works Assistance Account loans. And then it's not included on the slide, but I do think it's worth noting the passage of House Bill 1217 regarding rent stabilization. The bill caps the allowable annual rent increase at 7%. It prohibits increases during the first 12 months of tenancy, and it establishes stricter notice requirements for rent increases. The governor signed this bill into law, and it took effect immediately. And then finally, the passage of House Bill 1432, which is referred to as the Mental Health Parity Act, will hopefully improve access to mental health and substance use disorder services by ensuring that health plans provide coverage that's consistent with generally accepted standards of care. So now that the session is over, what's next? The first thing is I encourage the city to consider how you might thank your state legislators. Senator Stanford, Representative Dewar, and Representative Floba all did an exceptional job representing the city this past session. And it was a very difficult session. And so hearing from fellow elected officials expressing gratitude for their service can go a long way. And then based on what passed the legislature, there will be some implementation that's required of the city. And so just, I guess, be mindful of that city staff have some work to do as a result of what passed this session. And then more than ever, it's important that the city use any funds that have been awarded by the state. This past session, we saw it was a battle to retain funding that was already awarded. And so obviously the $5 million for the Bothell Way multimodal project isn't available in this biennium, but the Woodcrest Utility Project funding is, and I think there's some other outstanding capital budget awards from previous biennia that'll be really important to use so that they don't have to be reappropriated. That was something that the legislature made very clear this session, that they do not plan to reappropriate funds if they're not used within the biennium. And then over the interim months, we developed an action plan, which just outlines the key steps that we recommend the city take in order to prepare for the 2026 session, which will be here before we know it. Since this was a long session, it will be a short interim. It is a non-election year for the legislature, but there are 9 legislative races that will be on the ballot in the fall. So thank you for your time and attention this evening, and also for your engagement throughout the process. It's great to see you when you come down to Olympia, and it's always a pleasure to support you as you advocate for the city's priorities during your Hill Day. And I also just want to give a big thank you to city staff who provided me the timely response and direction that is needed during a fast-paced legislative session. I can only be successful on your behalf because of their support. So thank you, and I am happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Oh, Councilmember Aldrich.
Hi, Shelley. I don't have any questions, but a big thank you for this final report and for putting this all together. It's really great to see how our priorities were, progress was made and efforts were put in for each of the priorities that we had. And I know that as we, sorry, I'm looking over here because that's where I can see Shelley. That we'll be doing the work at the city to prepare for the next session, and we're just looking forward to continuing to work with you. And thank you for everything you did during this last session for us. And now I will yield to Councilmember Kurt.
Councilmember Kurd.
Thank you. And thanks for the presentation and all the work that you've done, Shelley, this past legislative season. I especially wanted to thank you and city staff for helping me and other council members prep for giving testimony. It was really easy to come in and have talking points ready to go that I could go off of, and knowing that you had kind of an up-to-date synthesis of the bill was really helpful, so I didn't feel like I was missing a lot of information. So just wanted to appreciate you one more time. It made it really easy to get online and give testimony. That was really, really helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Shelley. I appreciate you as always. I read through that very detailed report you had sent, as I do every week. I'm going to miss those. Maybe not so much.
You'll be getting them on a monthly basis moving forward. So.
Oh, nice. Nice. They'll be longer. They'll be like 4 times the size instead of 4 weekly, right? So well, thank you so much. I appreciate you being here and helping us along the way.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And so one final update, just in the interest of work that'll be commencing before our next meeting. I wanted to alert City Council of some activities that will be taking place on Main Street and Festival Streets, and outreach that will be going along with that. As you may recall, back in April, the council approved a contract to move forward with the implementation of bollards on Main Street and Festival Streets, as we've been discussing for a couple of years now, and that work is about to commence. So the bollards have been fabricated and are being delivered. In preparation, starting this week, staff from Public Works and our Economic Development Coordinator will be visiting the businesses on Main Street and in the adjoining property areas to notify them of this activity and help coordinate any questions that they have around construction schedule. That we're anticipating construction work to begin the first week of June. So again, by the time we have our first meeting, you'll probably see signs of that. And again, the locations of installation as requested by council will be on 185th, 183rd, and Main Street. The outreach will involve handouts of cards with links to the website. We'll have information online as well. We'll have door hangers on nearby property as well. So we're doing everything we can to make sure that we contact. We're also doing coordination with the City Parks Department to make sure that any events are coordinated and are not disrupted, and will be enhanced by the end of the summer. So that's good news. Total working time is estimated around 35 working days. So we'll be looking at somewhere in early July. So we'll also made sure that the schedule accommodates the 4th of July parade. So all of that is moving forward, and you'll see results of it soon. The other thing I did want to just note, well, 2 things. One is a thank you to Assistant City Manager Becky Range for running the meeting for me last week. She did a great job, and I've enjoyed watching the council meeting, not at 2 times speed, even though that is recommended by Councilmember Alders frequently, and just am not that generation, so I haven't been able to pull it off. But as I've watched that, I'm definitely, I picked up on the theme of interest in what we've learned about street trees and that sort of thing. So one of the examples of street trees that haven't worked, unfortunately, is on 101st Avenue. So during this project there will be removal of the street trees that are impacting the sidewalks and causing disruption to accessibility for all and being able to use the sidewalks. We will be repairing those sidewalks and bringing them back to the current standards. I do just want to note that we are not bringing them up to future standards yet. We are anticipating that there will be redevelopment in downtown in the coming years, and at that point, we'll look at bringing the sidewalk up to new standards, as well as replacing those trees with trees that will not create root intrusions and small mountains. So we're looking forward to that improvement and accessibility for all. Then lastly, I just want to note, Deputy Mayor, you asked to consider reopening public comment, and I do see that Katie is joined us in person. So I think we can solve the mute mic problem. So if you would like, we can turn things back over to the deputy clerk to reopen public comment for Katie.
That sounds good, Deputy Clerk.
Thank you. Katie, go ahead and just press the button. You'll have 3 minutes. Press the button on the microphone there. Excellent.
Okay, apparently I don't need to introduce myself because just by sight, I'm known. I was watching from home on the Zoom link. I felt like one of those Jeopardy contestants hitting unmute, 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 unmute. And it didn't work. I had, when I was watching through Zoom, I had a lot of things. I clearly have a lot of things that I like to say, but the reason that I threw on some clothes and jumped in my car and drove down here is because of the first two speakers. You were one, and I think you were one, because they said something that there's a lack of response from this city. I've been doing this for 3 years. I save everything. The emails, the phone calls, the voicemails, the in-person. I can't get responses probably 90% of the time for even the simplest, what I think are pretty simple questions. And so I'd like to thank people who also are standing up to say that that is a huge problem. How do you want the citizens to be engaged if you will not respond to us? This is one of my notebooks of city council, city issues that I would like answers to. And I'm planning on putting all of that together and presenting or asking at a later time when I have everything organized. But it's just beyond frustrating to comment, ask, and never get responses. So that is what I would like to say. Although I would also like to say, Public Works, can you please, 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 please trim the area at 19th and 238th Street Southeast? I have put in requests and it's not getting done. It's a huge visibility issue. It's treacherous to drive out of that cul-de-sac. It's always been done in the past, just with a simple phone call for me. And it's very important. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we will resume our agenda schedule by going to council committee reports, community reports, and conversations. City Council.
Deputy Mayor, we normally get to ask questions of the city manager during the city manager report. Is it okay to go back to that?
Please, let's go back and ask questions. Thank you.
Hi, city manager. I have some questions. So we heard two different issues earlier in public comment that are not council in the sense that there's no legislation to pass. Can we get follow-up on that through email later this week? I'm especially concerned about a sign being told to go to the city council because we would not go put up a sign. I'm assuming I would get some sort of yelling at if I did that. But I would love to hear more about those and what the response is.
Certainly. On the one of the two emails about the wetlands, council did receive an email on it. So again, per protocol, when council receives an email and staff does a response, we will always close out on that. For the gentleman who was speaking about the no parking signs, I did see, I realize that we don't always announce retirements, but Jamal Mahmood, who many of you know, did retire in the last month, but Ray Terry, who's filling into that role, I noticed did exchange cards. So we will be following up, and we'll certainly close loop with council on what's going on there.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And then with the trees on 101st, we're taking out the problematic trees. We're not putting in new trees. Am I hearing that?
That is correct.
Okay.
If you're familiar with the walkway, or if you want to take a walk after the meeting, you'll note it's very narrow there. And so even I think, in our current standards of what we would build, there would be more room to allow for the appropriate type of tree to coexist with that. And so with the narrow width of the sidewalk and the current conditions, the recommendation has been to remove them for now. And again, as downtown continues to develop and change, there'll be opportunities to revisit that in the future.
That totally makes sense. I just wanted to have the reasoning behind it in case I was asked. Thank you.
Councilmember Zorns.
In light of, I was going to say that for comments, but I will cover it now. I'm going to go through some grieving on those trees because they're gorgeous trees and really in a bad spot where they really need roots. So I'm going to, I swear I'm going to have a reputation as being a tree hugger, but I'm not going to be around when they come down. But the bollards going in, I'm so tickled pink about it. Not that it matters, not that it's about me. And I was going to ask you, if a random council member were to go down and hug the workers, would that be awkward or a little bit?
I'll encourage you to hug the trees.
I'll hug the trees, yeah. At any rate,
and a thank you will work for everyone else.
I'll do that. I can exercise some self-control. But it's very exciting to finally be getting the bollards in about a month's time, which is great. It'll be fun to see that. And then those cement blocks go away. So thank you for the good news tonight.
Please take pictures as she is hugging the trees.
We'll do our best.
Councilmember Alders.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Really glad to hear that about the updates in downtown. With the bollards going in, will they be ready before the Saturday night events take place?
They'll be ready during. So the first Saturday night Moonlight on Main event will be taking place on June 16th, I believe, or 14th. It's the Friday, that middle Friday and Saturday. We'll have two events that first week, actually. So that'll be in the middle of the construction project. And again, some of this is being phased to make sure that we can accommodate for allowing that to happen without disrupting the events, but then also completing it during. So again, we're looking at mid-July, and we'll still have several weeks of events to enjoy with the new environment.
Very cool. It'll be a lot of new exciting changes down there that we can all learn about together. Bollards, if they're done by mid-July, that I heard you say it's not going to interfere with 4th of July, but not completed by 4th of July.
Correct. So we'll actually be, the construction phasing will start up on this end of Festival Street and then making its way down to Main Street, and that is so that we don't impact the celebration of the year.
I will say that I do enjoy the concrete blocks. They are very lovely. The painting is very nice, and that was a community art project. I will not miss the construction signs that makes it look like a construction zone. So thank you for my moment to say that. And then also, can we get an update on lot EFG? Like where's that at?
Yeah, so from the update from a couple of weeks ago, I think everything is still there in terms of the last I knew we were negotiating with the 4 new tenants of the pop shops, and I think unless they were signed last week when I was out, I don't think I've seen those come through. So I think we're still negotiating that. So that'll be taking place, but the infrastructure is ready. So that is good news. And again, then the additional step will be around selection of the food truck-ish, they don't have to be trucks, but food service incubator program as well. So that is all coming together. But again, there's been four storefronts that have been selected, and we're working with them to make sure to get everything closed up. I think, again, the great thing about this program is helping potential business owners get experience, and I think signing your first contract to occupy a storefront is a pretty significant step, so it sometimes takes a little bit of time.
Thank you for that. Oh, okay, the deputy mayor is asking me to define lot EFG. You would recognize it as the gravel lot at the corner of 527 and so in downtown and 522 across from Bothell Landing. We are making it a temporary active space while soil mitigation and reclamation is occurring.
Absolutely. And the other thing I'll add too, just as a reminder, is that there will be an additional phase 2, that we'll be bringing back for consideration. We will have options for funding, but again, it'll be much quicker work, and we'll continue to make things look different. You may have noticed too, I think since the last time we mentioned, that there are picnic tables and places to sit, and so we'll be adding shade to that as well, although not needed tonight. That shade would be used for something else.
That shade would probably blow over tonight. Thank you very much for that update and continuing to follow through with that. Summer is coming. According to the roses that are blooming in my neighborhood, summer is here, and we're looking forward to the fun activities that we'll have here in the city. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. I guess now we go to the council committee reports, community reports and conversations. Councilmember Aldrichs.
I have an update from the North King County Coalition on Homelessness. The structure of these meetings is that we get to hear updates from cities in the coalition, updates from KCRHA, followed by our community partners. And so my notes reflect that. Anand, our Human Services Coordinator, updated everybody and said that the request for proposals for our behavioral health programming was closed, and that a selected preferred vendor, that 4 applications were brought in, and so we'll be hearing more about that in a future meeting. Kenmore had some really interesting information to share about their STEP housing planning work, and STEP stands for Shelter, Transitional Housing, Emergency Housing, and Permanent Supportive Housing. That is, they're doing a community engagement process with that, and it'll be really interesting to see how that comes together. KCRHA had an update that they're working to develop seasonal shelter to expand on and replace emergency shelter options, so that in cold and hot months, unhoused members of the community can receive improved services and have the evidence is strong in support of seasonal shelter. We will be invited to renegotiate or to renew the ILA that we have with KCRHA, and those negotiations will begin in early 2026. And so that is something that our human services staff and executive staff will be working with us to make sure happens. And it's an opportunity to reevaluate, like, what were the wins, what were the lessons learned, how can we improve it? And then we also have an update from Lake City Partners, who are working to send a seasonal shelter bid to KCRHA. And so if it's awarded, I'm curious to find out if that might serve North King County. As usual, the Oaks is running at 100% capacity. They recently opened up referrals and got 96 referrals in less than 3 days. And the executive director, William Towie, will say this on a regular basis, that he could fill 2 to 3 more shelters to meet the demand in our community. The women's shelter in Kenmore is operating at 70% capacity and still taking referrals. As I talked about over the last few weeks, the NUSA was hosting a lunch and learn with Professor Greg Colburn, who wrote the book Homelessness is a Housing Problem. And they had over 100 attendees, And the recording is available on YouTube and at the NUSA website. I also linked to it in my newsletter this week. And then we also heard a legislative update that that we heard, all of these were mentioned earlier when our lobbyist was speaking, but these particular bills will have an impact on homelessness and housing in order to reduce, prevent homelessness, prevent it from occurring in the first place, and then also helping house people who need to get into housing. And that includes the rental protections bill, the condo construction bill, and the parking minimums bill near TOD, or transit-oriented development. So those will give us some tools and remove some barriers to housing that will help the coalition achieve their goals of reducing homelessness in the area. That is my update. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Kurd.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Two updates at Sound City Association's Public Issues Committee last Wednesday. Update was given about the November ballot measure to renew the King County EMS levy. It's going to continue current levels of service at a rate of 25 cents per $1,000 of assessed value. It's an average annual cost of about $211 for an $840,000 home. That's down from the 26.5-cent rate back in 2020. So there was an update about that. The other thing was King County Solid Waste Division's rate changes were discussed. Rates are having to increase due to new capital expenditures like renovations to the Northeast Transfer Station in Houghton, other projects that they have got going on too. The current proposal is going to increase the average curbside rate for solid waste disposal by 71 cents per month across the county, along with an 8% increase in tipping fees and a 15% increase in fixed charges for each waste hauler. So that's going to be another 48-cent increase per month in Bothell, but overall, our total monthly rate is pretty low compared to other cities across the county. So there was some discussion in the committee about financial and environmental sustainability of the current landfilling paradigm of solid waste disposal in King County, but other than that, pretty solid meeting. Thanks.
Councilmember Zorns.
This is real short, more of a community announcement and reminder to Bothell at large that today is World Bee Day, and anything that we can do to protect and promote our pollinators and be a pollinating bridge in Bothell is a good thing.
Thank you. Good reminder. Seeing nothing else, I take a motion to approve the consent agenda. Councilmember Dodd.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion to approve the consent agenda made by Councilmember Dodd and seconded by Councilmember Zorns. Anyone wish to discuss?
Did we want to look at the projected agenda discussion before that, or do we want to come back to it?
I'll come back to
Okay.
it. It's okay.
Sounds good.
I'm pulling Mayor Thompson now. No discussion? Deputy Clerk?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Please say yes or no when I call your name. Councilmember Zorns?
Yes.
Mayor Thompson?
Yes.
Councilmember Aldrichs?
Yes.
Councilmember Kurd?
Yes.
Councilmember Dodd?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Alcabra?
Yes.
Passes 6-0 with Councilmember Mankey absent and excused.
All right. Now I will pull another Mayor Thompson and go the projected agenda discussion, going backwards. Anybody have anything they wish to discuss? All right. Seeing none, let's move forward. We have two study sessions today. One on the housing affordability incentives and the others on safe streets and sidewalks levy renewal. Let's take a 10-minute break, if that's okay, or an 11-minute break, and we come back at 7:20. Okay, welcome back. to the meeting. Now we will do study session 1 of 2, and I will hand it over to the city manager to kick us off.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And yeah, as you noted, we do have 2 study sessions tonight. This first one is returning to council after you provided direction last year for staff to begin work, and this is all also part of the implementation of from last year's legislative session as well around middle housing. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to our Community Development Director, Jason Greenspan, to introduce the topic and kick us off.
Thank you, City Manager. Good evening, Deputy Mayor, City Council members. We're here this evening to discuss potential options for expanding incentives to promote housing production citywide and help us meet our 2044 growth targets. Specifically, we're here seeking City Council's initial input and feedback on draft housing affordability incentive concepts that can support future production of dedicated, affordable housing. And that's particularly for those households with annual incomes that are below or at 80% of our area's median income, which we'll also refer to probably many times this evening as AMI. Next slide. So you'll see 4 questions up on the screen. We'll circle back to these at the end of the presentation, but I wanted to make sure you kind of kept these at the forefront of your mind this evening as we talk through the issues. So first, is there interest in refining and or adjusting some of the city's existing affordability incentives, which we'll outline for you? What do you think of the potential new incentives that we've floated in tonight's agenda bill and that we'll talk through? What adjustments would we or could we make to those suggested incentives? And are we missing any additional ideas or concepts for incentives that you would like to see? And before I move on, I think it's important to put a bit of data and statistics out there. So I look back at our permitting data over the past 5 years. We have permitted over 1,860 brand new housing units citywide between April 2020 and April 2025. 1,860. Slightly over 11% of those units were single-family detached units. Just over 200 were single-family. The vast majority, or 89%, or over 1,650 units, were either in multifamily or middle housing types like duplexes, triplexes, accessory dwelling units. And again, out of those total 1,860 units, a total of 76 have permanent dedicated affordability controls, which is roughly 4% of the total. And 100% of those affordable units are rentals for seniors and are age restricted. So I wanted to give that overall framework and context for how we're going to move forward with the discussion this evening. Next slide. In 2018, Bothell City Council developed and committed to a housing strategy to increase the city's range of housing options and to develop incentives for permanent affordability. And then over the next few years, zoning incentives were codified to maximize affordability opportunities. And we'll talk a little bit about those. You may recall the multifamily tax exemption program that was codified, some initiatives and incentives for our downtown zones and for Canyon Park. So those were put in place subsequent to the 2018 housing strategy. Then in 2021, just a bit of a chronology here, HB 1220 was enacted by the legislature, and that's really a landmark piece of legislation for what we do in the housing space and the comprehensive planning space, because it does not require cities to just plan towards one singular housing growth target, but also for housing that is affordable to all households in all income ranges. And then in 2022, HB 1110 doubled down on that directive through the lens of middle housing and required middle housing types to be allowed in all areas that are zoned for residential uses. City Council, as I'm sure you recall, then took the initiative to amend the code in March of last year to expand middle housing options throughout the city, and that also included certain triggers for affordability as well. But at the same time, last March, the City Council recognized that middle housing is not necessarily going to address our HB 1220 affordable housing targets. So the city adopted a resolution 1473, which is on page 113 of your packet, and asked staff to develop a housing action plan that would include potential future zoning code amendments that incorporate mechanisms to produce dedicated affordable housing in tandem with market rate housing. Now, you'll also recall the comp plan adopted this past December. We adopted a land use plan and a zoning map and zoning code regulations that provide increased capacity to meet our housing targets across all income bands. But the comp plan itself recognizes that zoning isn't by itself an effective strategy. So last month, community development staff provided an update to City Council on the overarching goals of our housing action plan and how we'll move forward over the next year or so to address affordability and a range of other issues. And one other quick regulatory update. You heard a little bit this evening from Shelley, and we're still digesting some of the raft of housing bills that were signed by the governor. One important bill was HB 5148, which is known as the Housing Accountability Act. And this effectively will empower the state to assess any city's compliance with meeting affordability targets and potentially take action if the city is not taking meaningful and substantive steps to get to those targets. It also provides the development community with recourse, which is commonly known as the builder's remedy, in cities that are not making progress, which would effectively let the private development community to bypass many local zoning regulations and build market rate and affordable housing to help us meet our targets. I would prefer that the city not be in that position. I'd rather get ahead of that and have us really positioned to meet our targets and not have to go down that route. Next slide. So Bothell does currently have mandatory and voluntary affordable housing regulations, but what empowers us to do that? Well, Washington has legislation that authorizes cities to develop mandatory or voluntary affordable housing provisions. Now, an affordable housing requirement may be based on a percentage of units or a percentage of the floor area in a development, provided the city does three basic things. Number one, the city identifies land use designations where increased residential development will help achieve local growth policies, and we have effectively done that with the comp plan. The city includes regulations to increase development capacity through zoning changes, bonus densities, height and bulk increases, parking reductions, or other regulatory changes or incentives. That's what we're here to talk about this evening. And third, that the city shows that increased residential development capacity can be achieved in the designated area that we're focusing on when considering other applicable development regulations, meaning that we have to make sure that we have aligned our incentives with what can reasonably happen based on all the other rules we have in our zoning code. So now I'm just going to hand over to Christian to discuss a few things, specifically where our incentives are offered now and where we have some of our affordable units, what our nearby cities are doing to incentivize affordability, and also get into some of the new concepts that would help us further incentivize affordability.
All right. So where do we require or have a requirement or a voluntary program? Currently, only in the downtown or in the Canyon Park area. So downtown on the left and Canyon Park on the right. The highlighted in green areas, the bright green, sorry, ignore the park, is showing up very similar up on the screen here. Are the zones within the city that have either a mandatory or a voluntary program, and that makes up just over 4% of the city's area that is in a zone that allows residential. So of all residential zoned properties, whether that's single family up to the most intense multifamily, just over 4% have a mandatory or a voluntary program. So as Jason mentioned, we're considering refining and expanding any potential future incentives within the affordable housing program or affordable housing codes, and looking to expand them under those provisions that he mentioned. So that's the where we require it. What are we seeing? What exists? This is just some of the projects in the city, these have been built over the years, and all of them incorporate some form of accountability control, some dating back to the late 1960s. While this is just a snapshot of the existing housing units, the Housing Action Plan will assess and catalog all the existing affordable housing units located throughout the city to give a really clear indicator of what exists, what was built, when some of these are prior to annexing those areas, which ones have various levels of affordability, which are for seniors, which a number of them up on the screen are. So that's the what exists. What do others do? So other cities like Bothell have established either mandatory, voluntary, or both types of programs. Some are located within higher density zones. Some cities like Kirkland have them required in all multifamily zoned areas. The programs establish a quantity of units required. So from 10% of the units within a project up to 25% in Kenmore. Some of these have been in place for years. Some are much newer. So as Jason was mentioning, the late 90s, probably the Bellevue model, Kirkland took theirs on in the mid 2000s, as well as many of these other jurisdictions. And then all of them have some form of incentive or bonus, whether it's number of units, amount of floor area you can add, density, height, some waive portions of fees. And so what we're looking to do is to see how we can sort of learn from what others have done, and how we could incorporate those. I'm going to get into some of the thoughts on incentives. Bothell, we do have both, and we have requirements between 5 and 10%, and the incentives that we list out are based on density and height.
Is that what the city of Kenmore just passed? Because in their last few meetings, they passed some inclusionary zoning.
Yeah, so this is the most recent information we have prior to any, I'd say, last few months. Okay. And all of these are in flux. Everyone is evaluating after they've adopted their comprehensive plans, how to progress forward, how to evaluate what their programs do, what they might need to adjust. I think this we pulled from Arch, who maintains that information, and was from around late 2023-24.
Gotcha. Kenmore just passed something really interesting about affordability on larger units, and smaller ones are excluded. So that's why I was curious.
Okay.
I had a related question on that. If with the 25% of units, if Kenmore has seen any developments utilizing that, but if it's brand new, then the answer is no.
Yeah. And through the Housing Action Plan, staff are going to be connecting with many of these jurisdictions, kind of learning, kind of after we have this conversation tonight, how to move forward with affordability incentives, but also what has been working or not working with other cities. On to the why do we do this? So as part of the housing strategy and the comp plan, both of which establishing policies that require inclusionary housing standards within Bothell, we have to plan for developing housing for all. What you see up here, the two things that are the most important, we see cost burdened, and then we've got our housing targets. The cost burdened, what we have inventoried is that almost a third of all households are cost burdened. That's up just about 5,000 households, and renters are much more prone to be cost burdened, with owners of homes only at around 19%.
Can you define cost burdened and AMI for those who may not know?
Yes. So AMI is the area median income, based on the average for our region, and cost burdened is paying more than 30%. Then severely cost burdened would be paying more than 50%. We didn't put that up on here, and we pulled all of this data out of the comprehensive plan appendix B for our housing inventory. So paired with the number of households that are cost burdened and our housing targets, which in the pie, the 12,785 housing units, that was our multi-county planning policy targets established. 9,550 have to be either permanent supportive housing, non-permanent supportive housing, 30 to 50% AMI, or 50 to 80% AMI. So 75% of the residential units that we are targeted to see developed by 2044 have to have a deed restriction affordability requirement of households making under 80% or under of the area median income. So that's the why. That's the challenge that we see. What we are seeing develop is, and this is taking into account just rentals. So going to run through this table. A studio apartment is assumed a household size of 1. In 2025, the area median income for a single household of 1 was $109,970. That's the 100% AMI. 80% is $21.99, and on and on and on across to the right. New downtown rental development, there's units that achieve the 80%, but nothing below that. Outside the downtown newer development is above that 80%, and so on down the list of 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom. You can see that what we're seeing constructed out there without any requirements to include a mandatory affordability provision. We're not seeing them at least the 80%. And we understand that below 50 is going to be very, very difficult. Learning about the REIT and opportunities for finance, utilizing funds for the 0 to 30%, that's gonna be the challenge everyone's facing. But how do we incorporate these 50 to 80% units? And then what do we do? What can we do to move forward here? So within the packet and on the screen are a series of incentives that we've been considering that we can throw at an affordable housing program. Density flexibility, either allowing more or less density. We say less because there are some zones that have a mandatory minimum density, and creating some flexibility in there might create the opportunity for some creative development opportunities. Obviously looking at height and stories, whether that's bumping up fractions of a story or an entire story. Both, well, sometimes those have other implications, but we'd have to evaluate those. Potentially reducing parking. On parking, though, we did chat with Planning Commission about this, and they did follow the recommendation of City Council to move forward with, and you'll hear about that on June 3rd, moving to the parking minimum, no parking minimum, excuse me. So that would eliminate parking as a tool on this list. Looking at permit and impact fees, what we can control, we can waive impact fees for affordable units and consider how we can approach making something palatable for development. We can also look internally to our processes and have learned from other jurisdictions potential opportunities for increasing the turnaround for projects that incorporate affordable housing and speeding that up, as they're generally looking for quick turnarounds with permits so they can break ground as quickly as possible. If we can close that gap a little bit and make up some time as an opportunity. And as always, the MFTE program, looking to revise that scope sort of on a separate track, but it is a tool that is always out there. So next steps, after discussion tonight, this will help inform us in how we move forward with redefining and developing our affordable housing incentives. We'd like to consider how we can develop updates within the affordable housing program that exists, the standards that exist, and where we might expand that to. But tonight, we're really just looking at is this list of incentives the right list? Could it be expanded? Are there others? And we'll land on the following, or the last slide, reiterating that there is no action tonight, but want to make sure we have the opportunity to discuss through these questions here.
Don't you all speak all at once? Everybody is digesting.
Y'all are just, let's let Jean go first. I'll go first. I have several questions, and I may hop back in here. Has there been any interest expressed to community development from other developers about looking at areas in Bothell that could take more density? If it was allowed, they would love to put something there, wherever there is? Or is everybody pretty much focused on downtown and Canyon Park? I can't think of areas in Bothell that leap to mind of, yeah, let's put more density there, but.
Yeah, currently, not to my knowledge, with the recent updates in December, the density limits were raised quite significantly, creating that opportunity already.
Right.
So we haven't had anybody say they want more than what has already been established.
Because we're basically doing up to 4plexes, is that right? Right, where we've raised density in around single-family homes, but we're not doing 3, 4-story, 5-story apartment buildings outside of where they're already allowed.
Correct.
Okay. I don't know how I'm going to be answering these questions. I am really interested in the MFTE discussion. Myself and Mason were part of that decision, and I can still see the developer who was really asking us not to put, I think we put in perpetuity on the units that were getting bonus units. And I recall him saying, please don't do that. I think he was asking, maybe Mason will remember, 7, 8 years. He was asking us to stick with that. And so I think, yes, we do need to revisit MFTEs and how they can be applied. Are the MFTs limited to 80% AMI?
I believe there are different ranges based on the length of the tax exemption.
Okay.
So there are some more forgiving or lower ranges, and it really just depends on the length.
Okay. So a question to think, not have an answer now, but if there was an MFTE that, say, it was started off at a 30% AMI, and it was that for a period of time, then go to a 50% AMI for a period of time, and then 80% AMI, because over time on those units, that might be, I don't know. I was just trying to figure out how you could still keep some affordability on units without completely having an expiration date on them.
And just to clarify there, I'm looking at the code right now, the length of exemption is 8 years, 12 years, and then
Right.
12 years again for different things. So there's
Okay.
nothing that's in perpetuity.
It's not in perpetuity. Okay, thank you very much. But I just remember that developer was saying he wanted to build across from the campus. And he was saying, please don't do the decision that we made because he wouldn't be able to build. So I would love to revisit that because, he held true to what he said. He wouldn't be able to build with what we did. Interesting about the number of multifamily ADUs and things. Did you say 89% of our permits have been?
89% has been something other than single-family detached.
Other than single family. That's fascinating. And then another question on permit expediting. Are you talking about like putting a priority if somebody's got affordable housing in it, they would move to the front of the line for getting a permit through? You're not cutting corners on things.
That's the concept, is that it would speed up the process. They would jump the queue.
Okay.
But not forego any codes.
Okay. And the parking thing, we're going to be talking about it in June, so I'll save it for that. I'm really concerned about enforcement and the repercussions of not having that. But yes, you've brought up some great topics. Whatever everybody else wants to toss into the mix to talk about, I'm good with. I just appreciate answering those questions. Thanks.
Mr. Mayor.
Hi, everyone. I really enjoy what you've brought us and what you've done with this, and thank you. I appreciate it. I was reading something earlier about how Portland has done some of these, I guess, relaxation of some of the rules that have been pretty impactful and have been able to get affordable units built in the meantime. Like, I would be really curious to know kind of what's been the biggest difference for, cities that have done this already. So like, I'm a yes on all of the regulatory relaxations. And I mean, just bring us the options you think are good. If it's, setbacks, if it's, whatever it happens to be far, I know we still have, just yes. The MFTE, I believe the developer was asking us to do something permanently. And we had some testimony from some folks presenting to us that said, they hadn't really noticed a difference in between the 12-year and the permanent. What I learned after the fact is it's a financing problem a lot of the time. If it only lasts 12 years, then they have a much harder time actually funding the project and being able to do it. So I agree with Councilmember Zones. I think that was a miss on our part a couple of years ago, and I would absolutely love to revisit that as well, because if you have an MFTE that nobody is taking advantage of, then you don't have an MFTE. That's pretty much all I've got. I appreciate just kind of what you brought with us tonight, and I'm looking forward to seeing it come back.
Thank you for the presentation. I think it's a good list. I can't think of anything additional, but yes to all of it. Like the mayor said, I think we need a lot of solutions because there's different parts of the city where different things will work. I'm curious about allowing more or less density. I think what we've talked about a lot is that more density lets more units be built so that it's easier to make affordable units pencil out. So can you talk me through what less density would look like and how that would be beneficial?
I'll try, as it sort of seems counterintuitive. Yes. So some of the zones have a minimum density of so many units per acre. And we are seeing some developers that identify projects that aren't hitting that minimum right now. So creating the opportunity to, yes, produce a couple, and this is generally a few units. It's not drastically less. They're just not quite hitting the mark. Creating an opportunity to maybe build a few less units while a few of them that they do build are affordable. So establish what the minimum density is, base the number of affordable units, the percentage on what that minimum requirement is, and say if it is 3, okay, even if you back out the total number of units, you still have to build those 3 or 4, however many the math works out there. Creating flexibility in the type of product that is put together, whether it's townhomes, detached structures. So does that help?
Yeah. I think I would just want to make sure the trade-off is worth it. Like maybe that's a permanently affordable, gain versus just, I worry about the 12-year programs, and some of that comes from my grandma lived in one in Ellensburg, and then the rent exceeded her ability to pay it after the federal HUD thing expired, and like all the seniors in her complex were priced out. Like it was kind of crappy. So I would not want us to have people feel like they've found their place in Bothell, and then 12 years hits and it's like, well, get out, we're going to charge more now. So I just, as long as it's worth the trade-off, I think that's the important part for me.
I have the question that you just answered. It's more of a tactical question, but so if we have 75%, the pie chart you showed earlier, the majority of the homes that need to get built, or the housing that needs to get built is in that pie chart, so under 80% AMI. But if we only are allowing a small percentage of each project to get built, or not, well, a small percentage of the project is affordable for it to pencil out, because there's multiple variables in this equation. How are we going to reach that 75%, volume in 20 years? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because the majority have to be affordable homes, not the minority.
Right. Without saying, okay, our affordable requirement is 75% of all units constructed, that it's infeasible. Yes. So finding that balance and understanding that there may be larger projects that do come out of TOD development, private-public partnerships, other opportunities that we could, work into the housing action plan to establish policies and goals to really seek those out and seek out the filling in their large gaps, but filling in those gaps, having to start somewhere. We're unpacking, as Jason mentioned, the Housing Accountability Act and what's in there. I think the writing's on the wall that there has to be something greater than what jurisdictions have, and we're learning day by day what that might need to be, whether it's dialing that up to 20, 25. I mean, I don't want to say 30, but there's percentages that are going to have to be considered to make sure that we are on track and we can report back within the 5-year look back, as well as how we go about taking codes out of this work and send it to the state for their review under that new legislation to make sure we're doing what they're identifying as consistent.
Yeah, it's all new, and
Yes.
and there are multiple stakeholders in this marketplace, and all needs have to get balanced, right? Somehow. The biggest thing for me is the incentives. I see the list, and to the point of the least restrictions we can provide, the better. I don't know what the list. I don't know what I don't know, and I wonder if there are cities or jurisdictions, or whether in our region, in our country, or maybe worldwide, internationally, that have done things that we may want to emulate, that might be innovative. Nobody in the U.S. has ever thought of it, but it worked in Spain, for example. Just throwing an example because I like Spain. So that's just a question for me is how can we consider national and international jurisdictions to look at what they may have, because they are a lot more populous than us and they have big problems also, right? So siestas, I like siestas. Councilmember Kurd.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. I have a couple of comments here. First, thanks for the presentation. It's exciting that we're in the stage of implementation of our comprehensive plan. And these are the hard conversations that we have to have. So I'm grateful that you're coming to us early. I like the list of incentives that you've provided and you've workshopped through Planning Commission. One that I don't particularly like is a reduced parking, because it again represents sort of this pretextual planning kind of component that I've been harping against for a while. I don't like trading the removal of something bad like parking mandates for something good that we want. It's just, we shouldn't have parking mandate anyway. And so I think that one warrants a little bit more consideration in the future in combination with kind of the discussions that Councilmember Zorns brought up that we'll be having in June. The other kind of thing that I'm keeping in my mind during your presentation is that inclusionary zoning principles, when they're unfunded, tend to not work very well, and funded inclusionary zoning is kind of a better way to go. And some of the discussions in Kenmore have been to participate at the state level in regional and state discussions to try and improve the funding situation for something like that. But I think that Shoreline has a funded inclusionary zoning process, and I know that we use Arch, but I'm wondering if we could get additional information about what Shoreline is doing, and maybe have a conversation about Arch and the policies that that we participate in Arch, and whether they're producing the type of and the speed of production of affordable units that we need here, and if Arch needs to be if policies at Arch need to be changed in order to more fully fund an inclusionary zoning kind of mandates throughout all the member jurisdictions, then I think those are sorts of policy type discussions that we should be having, and we should be bringing back to Arch too. So it's complicated. Thanks for bringing us into the conversation early. I like the list that you have. I don't want to talk about parking in this context, surprise. And I would love for you to take a look at Shoreline's code in their policies and processes, and see if there's any sort of overlap. They're kind of paving the way in Washington, and I'd like to see how we can learn from them.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Kurt. I was just going to acknowledge, I see note taking. So since you're not in the room, I don't know if you can see that. I just want to let you know that we are following up on that. The other thing I'll note is I actually have a scheduled email to go to you at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, because I didn't want to send you anything right before the council meeting. But you'll see the city council is being invited to participate in some focus groups around Arch governance and whether or not there are any changes that city councils would like to see. So you've primed the pump for some thoughts, and I hope at least one of our council members is able to participate. So you'll see more about that in the morning.
I mean, this is an important.
Excellent, thank you.
Arch or not Arch, it is an important funding, public funding to achieve the goals we want to achieve.
Correct. I think there's some opportunities within Arch, and then there's some things that are beyond. So it's a matter of figuring out where the right goal is.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And thanks, Mayor, for letting me speak before you do. Yeah, you keep coughing and feel better. He's trying. I know. Okay. Thank you for bringing this forward. It's such a big topic. And I think like some of my colleagues here, I would like to see more case studies from across the country, and I'm really glad that the Deputy Mayor brought up internationally too, because we're not alone in having to solve for this problem. There's a lot of other places who are, around the world who are working on this as well, and I think we can learn from it. I'm always a fan of learning from Europe, because they've been doing this a lot longer than we have, in terms of, their cities are very, very old. Compared to ours. And there's two things that kind of that just really stand out to me in this discussion, which is right now affordable housing is only allowed in 2 zones of the city. And I would like to see us increase, I do like the idea of allowing affordable housing in all multifamily zones, or there's always the, sometimes the fairest thing is to treat everybody the same and say everyone gets the opportunity. And so somewhere between multifamily zones and all is where I'd kind of fall. But also just to kind of harken back to the comp plan, we did add a couple of centers to the comp plan. If I remember correctly, those were Queensboro and Maywood. And if that's the case, then I don't think that going picking on neighborhood by neighborhood is an approach I enjoy taking. I much would rather say let's all do this together, hold hands and jump. But those are some directions for that, and at least directions of thinking for me. Next up is that I think I heard you say 5 to 10% is sort of where our affordability requirements currently are. And that is lower than our neighboring cities. I didn't see a 5% in any of the other cities. And so at least coming up to 10. I'm curious to see how it goes in Kenmore with their 25%, but somewhere between 10 and 20% might be our next step. And then when it comes to the affordability incentives, I know that there are currently projects that are looking to build who, want to see some of these incentives like the height increases. I think the permit expediting is really important because we know that we need to prioritize these types of housing. And so getting them to the front of the line and reducing that turnaround time, I think is important. I was at a meeting, couldn't tell you when. It was the Lunch and Learn. If it's taking 7 years to build an affordable housing project, we're gonna have it's gonna be really slow to see these things happen. And so what we can do to reduce barriers and what can also reduce the amount of time it takes and the struggle that these projects have in getting going. Also at the Lunch and Learn, there was, I got to go to the in-person, 12 people showed up kind of thing. So I wasn't just at home eating lunch by myself. I was eating lunch in community. And there I met one of the volunteers for Housing Hope. They're an organization in Snohomish County. They're seeing success at building affordable units when there's fewer units. And so we're not talking, the 200, 300 unit, but they're at the 30 to 70 range. And so I wonder if that less density flexibility that you're discussing might be a good fit for the types of projects that they are working on. And it might be really useful for us to learn about some of their successes and see, are they a potential partner for some of these projects here in Bothell? I'm almost done. And then I would like to go to the slide. Slide 9, the housing targets by AMI. So we can, thank you. So we can see that permanent supportive housing, non-permanent supportive housing, 30%, 50%, and the 50 to 80, that is most of the pie. You said about 3/4, which that is what it looks like. And I mentioned this earlier in my update from the Coalition on Homelessness, that those are the types of housing called step housing. And it's really interesting to see what Kenmore is doing to bring forward that planning. And it might be useful if we're talking that this is our hurdle. It might be useful to convene a similar kind of planning group just for those types of housing and focus on step housing and as a kind of sub-project of this bigger housing affordability plan. I was going to bring that up in a one-on-one with our city manager in a couple weeks or next week, but here we are talking about it today. And those were my thoughts based on this. I really do think that the case studies from across the world would be very beneficial, because there might be things that are not on our slide here that we might want to consider. So I look forward to more of these discussions. Thank you.
I appreciate that comment. I will mention that having spoken with our new building official, we started looking at specific building code flexibility that could be provided. And so things like mass timber could be an option. That may be something that's normalized in our code in the next couple of years anyway. So I'm not sure that that would be an incentive, but however, it's something that we're still investigating, various ways of access to existing buildings and to proposed buildings, maybe single stair options, just more flexibility in the way buildings are designed as well. So we are looking at how that's being applied in other cities, and I know the city of Portland did have some success in that space.
Great, thanks. I know there's a lot that we can talk about. When the mayor is ready.
I'm happy to wait until everybody else is done. I already had my first turn.
I think now that I have spoken, it's your turn.
Okay, cool. A couple things came up that I just wanted to speak to during the discussion. The minimum density trade for affordable housing units is something I actually really like. I'm questionable about my comfort level with minimum densities in the way that we have them. So I like that as a solution and would support it. And just as we go and discuss these, are we going to be talking with anybody in the building community who can like tell us how this will affect a pro forma and like actually make things happen?
Yes, that's the plan, to involve the development community through the conversations. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. That's it. Thank you.
Did you get what you need?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for being here in the presentation. Looking forward to the follow-up. All right, let's take another 10-minute break or make it, 10-minute break, 8:16, we'll be back. Okay, we're back, and we have our final topic for the night, Safe Streets and Sidewalks Levy Renewal, and I'll kick it off to City Manager.
Thank you very much. Tonight, we are scheduled for a study session to continue our discussions on funding for Bothell's transportation infrastructure and consideration of asking voters of the community to renew the Safe Streets and Sidewalks Levy for an additional 9 years. Tonight, I'm going to be doing a little bit of presenting, so I get a longer introduction. Let me go back a slide, though. And I'm joined by, to the front, thank you. I'm joined tonight by Quan Wong, the city's finance director, as well as Aaron Lenhart, the public works director. And we'll be presenting together and happy to answer any questions that you have. So earlier tonight, before we move on, we had a recap of the 2025 legislative session in Olympia. And one of the things that Shelley noted, and is also in your agenda bill tonight, is that a number of years ago, the state of Washington voters approved a statutory limit of 1% on property tax increases per year. And the exception to that is unless jurisdictions go out to the community with specific measures and specific needs and ask for property tax to support them. So the intention of this model gives voters the opportunity to consider a program, consider what if it's something that they value, and then to see demonstrated results of their investment and consider potential reinvestment at the end of that term. So it's basically a point in time of what did you say you were going to do, and are you accountable for doing it? That reevaluation is what staff is recommending to take place in November of this year, and tonight's presentation will highlight what a voter-approved package may include, as well as the necessary steps for City Council to take to add this question in a November general election ballot. So before we get into more details of that process, I also wanted to share with you some early reflections from the final Economic Vitality Plan, which Ashish and I will be presenting to you on June 10th. So that's coming up in a couple of weeks. We received then a final draft of that plan this morning. So I was reflecting on this as I was preparing, and I wanted to provide some context for you about the importance of street and sidewalks from a business perspective, is in addition to what we've talked about from what we hear from our residents, and we'll talk about that more later. So some themes that you'll see in that presentation include the importance of walkable and accessible business areas, creation of vibrant districts, safe access and pedestrian routes. And then one of the things that every time I go out and meet with some of our business community, particularly out in Canyon Park and in North Creek, is the support of making sure that employees have opportunities to get to and from their places of work. So that includes transit, but it also includes street access for employees. We also sometimes hear questions from the community about businesses paying for city services. And we've spoken about some of that in past conversations, particularly around sales tax, which is not the topic tonight. But we've talked about the breakdown of that 28% comes from retail trade, 28% comes from manufacturing. More germane to tonight's discussion, though, I thought it'd be helpful to reiterate that property taxes themselves, which is what we're talking about, property taxes are supported by all property owners. So sometimes we just think of property taxes as being homeowners, but property owners have that bear that cost, and it includes private sector and company ownership. So a couple of statistics to consider about that is we've reached out to both King and Snohomish County about the breakdown of who pays. We've heard back from King County. We're still waiting from Snohomish County, but wanted to just share that a little over a quarter of the property taxes generated in King County come from commercial property. It's 26% commercial, 74% residential. Now, while we haven't gotten that exact figure from Snohomish County, we'd actually anticipate that percentage will be even higher on the commercial side based on the types of businesses and concentration that we have in Snohomish County. Additionally, one of the things we also know from our economic vitality work is that the top 10 principal property taxpayers in Bothell are all private companies, and they make up 2% of the overall property tax generated in the city. So 10 property owners make up 2% of the entire city property tax. So when we talk about who's paying for what, I just wanted to bring that theme in tonight of our property tax is paid by property owners, which includes both businesses and residents. Moving on. So now for the slide 2 for the ask of the City Council, what tonight we're here to do is we've had a series of conversations. What we're looking for tonight is if the City Council does seek or is supportive of seeking voter approval for a renewal of the Safe Streets Levy, which would be a renewal at a 9-year duration, once again at 50 cents per $1,000 assessed value. Moving on to the next slide, before we discuss renewal, just want to highlight a few things about what we've accomplished through 2024. Council recently heard information about that. We presented it in March. So some of those accomplishments, though, that we wanted to talk about is available in attachment 1 of the packet. Go ahead. No, the levy has supported a work in street operations as well as engineering. In addition to the regular maintenance activities, street operations includes pavement and sidewalk repair programs. In the first 8 years of the levy, we're in year 9 right now, street operations has repaired 98,000 square feet of roadway and plans to increase that number by 60% this year by investment in new equipment. And just to share a little highlight of that, the ELT had a presentation from our streets team just recently. And what's exciting about the work that they're doing is that by buying new equipment, they've actually, just this fall, they've demonstrated an ability to decrease the duration of time and decrease the hours spent on it. The old patching method took about 5.5 days of labor consisting between 2 and 6 crews, depending on which step in the process it was. The new patching method is down to 2.5 days with less staff assigned to it. So less hours, total employee hours down from a high of 220 to 100 hours, 2.5 days instead of 5 days. Less asphalt used, so less materials used. So fewer work days, fewer employees, and fewer injuries, because also being able to use equipment that is more efficient and takes a reduction of physical labor, which is really all great news. In addition of that cost savings, we also know that we're currently maintaining about 300 lane miles of roadway. And one of the things that we've learned through the comprehensive plan and kind of the modeling of where we're at as a city is we're not looking at adding more lanes of road, but there's an importance then of taking care of what already exists. If we don't want to be in the business of building new roads, we need to take care of the roads that we have. In addition, the Street Operations and Sidewalk Repair and Replacement Program replaced 2.84 miles of sidewalk on school walk routes so far. That's 25, we put this out recently, it's 25 Space Needles end to end to give an illustration of that. A list of those locations is available on page 9 of attachment 1 in your packet. On slide 4, one of the things we want to highlight too, and it's one of the reassurances that I had when I first moved here. I, of course, moved off of 228th, and as a city manager, it's a point of pride for me of I don't take snow days unless we're really, really strongly advising people to stay off the roads, but I trust our crews. But I was looking at 228th and remembering, oh man, this is a lot steeper than I remember. And Erin reassured me. She said, I think you're going to be fine. And sure enough, I've been fine. We receive a lot of positive feedback and often hear from people of they know when they've arrived at Bothell because the conditions of the roads is so much different than anywhere else they're at. And that level of service is supported by this levy as well. On slide 5, we want to turn to engineering, which the council does have an opportunity to hear a lot more about some of the engineering efforts that we have. But again, highlighted by our finance director, and you'll hear probably more again tonight, one of the things that is a hallmark of what we do is looking at how to leverage other funding to bolster what the community provides. And we are at we run in our CFP at about 51% coming from outside sources. So far, too, we've also constructed 4 high-priority school walk routes and 11 fashion crosswalks. We've maintained a pavement condition index of 71%, which is a good level. And again, all of this information, we put out an annual report every year, and those annual reports are all still live and available out on bothellwa.gov/safe streets. Moving to the next slide, and then I'll take a break for a while. We also wanted to have some visual reminders of what a before and after looks like. So this is 188th Street. And again, one of the clear examples of when we're talking about transformation and opportunities. And we heard tonight about concerns about safety for children and pedestrians. And even if people don't necessarily prioritize the sidewalks, they sure do help. And so there's just a reminder of what we've been able to deliver to the community. So with that, I believe I'm going to turn things over to Kwan to talk a little bit more about what a renewal would include and what the timeline would be to move us forward. Kwan?
Great, thank you, Kyle. So I was so eager to move the slide deck forward because this is what we are really proud of showing to the City Council and the general public because they approved the levy 9 years ago. And they are asking us, what have we done with the money? So this is a way for us to really demonstrate what we have done with the tax dollars. So this is clearly showing before and after. So I'm really proud to show this picture. I think this is a great find. And again, picture is just there. If you go around the city, and again, being new to the job 2 years ago, I have seen the Public Works Department and their staff. They have done a lot, and they are committed to their mission of bringing a safe environment for people to drive, for people to walk. So what we are asking the City Council to do tonight is really consider a recommendation that staff is putting forward. And again, the first month of my job here 2 years ago, Council gave us, not just me as the finance director, but for the entire city, how do we develop a long-term stable budget? How do we develop a long-term stable financial plan? So this is what we are coming to you with a strong recommendation. We are not looking at just money, just revenues, but also on the expenditure side. Kyle talked about how we improved our operation, how we use machines and technology to improve efficiency. So we are looking at every opportunity to make that better, to have a better and safer environment so that we, again, use the tax dollar more effectively. Also, what we have done, besides looking at the levy, we did look at other financial options, but this is the best option we are presenting to you, and hopefully for you to present to the voters for them to say yes. So with all the good work, the 9-year levy will expire at the end of this year. So if nothing happens, the money that we have been counting on for the past 9 years will go away. So right now, after really a year worth of work, we are proposing that the council should present to the voters with a renewal to continue the delivery of various programs, including street safety programs, maintenance, repairs, and future transportation projects. We are proposing to renew it at the original 50 cents per 1,000 assessed value. This will generate, according to our preliminary calculation, about $10.3 million a year, or if you do the math, it's $93 million over the 9-year total. So I anticipate the question, so what's the impact on a property owner? As Kyle said, this will be on both commercial and residential property owners. So just naming it as an example, for a $1 million property value, the impact will be $41.03, I believe, a month, or $500 a year. So we're not asking for more, but we're just asking to renew it at the original 50 cents per 1,000 assessed value. And this will also support our matching grants to secure additional state and federal funding. Based on what we have done in the past 9 years, we were able to use every dollar that we generated from this levy to leverage an additional $1.5 from state and federal grant. So that means we have $2.5 to add to the investment. So I hope this is not lost in our discussion. And again, people have always worry about if we could match federal grants because of the current environment. But my response is, if we don't have the money and if the opportunity arrives, that is an opportunity lost if we do not have the matching dollar in our pocket. So how did we get here? Again, last year we did quite a bit of work and I learned a lot. So back in June of 2024, we came to the council with a study session about this levy and consider other opportunities such as maximizing the transportation benefit district. So we presented to the council different options in terms of revenue strategies. December 10th, 2024, council adopted the 2024 comprehensive plan and the transportation element. So having said that, we went through quite an elaborate public engagement process, and we also ran several public hearings in person and also online. So we did engage the public to come up with so-called the priority transportation investment. And of course, the levy will not be able to fund all of that. And we are not asking you and the voters to fund every dollar. We will use what we have and look at opportunities. So this is not even addressing the entire list, but the most critical and prioritized projects. And then February 11th, earlier this year, we did another council study session on the transportation funding. So potential next steps. So today is May 20th. This is the council study session. We're asking you to give us instruction on renewing the 9-year Safe Streets and Sidewalk levy. If we are given the instruction, we will come back in June and July with all of the required legislation to ask for your approval. We'll come back with an ordinance and perhaps other required documents so that we can file the levy measure by August the 5th. You will also be asked to appoint a pro and con committee to prepare statements for voters' pamphlet. After we turn over to the election office, we are limited in what we can do. We cannot campaign for this measure. So we will do our best to communicate with the public and what accomplishments that we have done and what we are asking them to do. And August 5th is the filing deadline for the November election. So with that, I will turn the table to Kyle.
That's right. This will be the last you hear of me for a while. But just to reorient you as well, Council, we've presented some options around what would be in this package, and it's really it's informed by what we have heard from the community. I've mentioned some of the feedback that we've just recently gotten from our business community, but we also know that in the budget survey, which we conduct along with the biennial budget, that we do ask our residents of what is important to them. And so this last May, you heard a presentation where we received responses from over 1,000 residents, and their top budget priority was for Bothell was led by the desire for maintenance of roads, traffic lights, and signs. That came up 62% of the time as a top preference. You may also recall the public engagement events that took place over the past year of the comprehensive plan, which helped inform the transportation element of the comprehensive plan. A lot of the themes of that came in around connecting and safety and well-maintained roads. We also are informed by a safe walking routes plan, the bike plan, and overall capital facilities plan, of which the council gives prioritization as part of the budget of what are the projects that we would look at. That's also that includes the Planning Commission, the Parks Board, and of course the City Council. And as well as the 2040 Bothell City Council vision and priorities. So what we've landed with is 4 categories and a distribution of funding that would break down as 38% going to keeping our roads safe and maintained, 19% for that pavement repairs and upgrades, 17% for safe walking and biking routes. And some of this it's less about constructing those routes and more about getting them ready so that we are able to compete for funding to complete those projects. So getting things up and running. And then one of the elements that is newer for this package as well is future transportation projects, of which 26% would go. And a number of times I think you've seen of where there's either an interest in a specific project that is in our CFP, or we're fighting for funding and we just can't get over that finish line. And so having a pool of funds available so that council can then give direction of saying, using that funding, let's go complete such and such project is something that we really want to maintain that flexibility. These are the percentages. It really does break down to, if it was annualized, around 3.9 million on maintenance and operations, 2 million on pavement preservation, 1.7 on safety, sidewalks, and bike preparation, and then that additional funding for future projects would be about $2.7 million. And so to cover a little bit more detail of what those categories include, I'm going to turn things over to Aaron to walk you through.
Thank you, Kyle. So maintenance and safety operations. So the proposal includes our existing level of service that we have in the existing levy, and also includes additional staff in transportation engineering to support safety needs. It also includes resources for maintenance of upcoming pedestrian and bike facilities, as well as a higher level of maintenance for the North Creek Trail. Okay, next slide. And next one, I changed the title a little bit to Improving Our Most Used Roads. So the renewal proposal continues a focus on Bothell's most frequently used roads, with funding for collector and arterial overlays, plus some additional funding to perform overlays on high-use local streets that we don't have in our current expiring levy. It also retains the partnership between the operations patching program and the engineering pavement preservation program. Next. Safe walking and biking. The proposal broadens the non-motorized program to focus on the council-adopted 2023 sidewalk prioritization study, as well as the bike plan. It also includes safety funding to help reach the city's goal of 0 deaths and serious injuries. And finally, as Kyle mentioned, capital investments in the expiring levy were dedicated to pavement preservation, school walk routes, and crosswalks. The proposed renewal would provide local funding to support a connected community as envisioned in the comprehensive plan. These include sidewalk improvements as well as large projects for all users like the Bothell Way Multimodal Project, which includes protected bike lanes, sidewalks, as well as transit and safety improvements.
So that brings us really to the question for tonight, which is, does council support this direction of bringing something forward to the voters in November to approve a renewal of a 9-year levy at 50 cents per 1,000 assessed value? And with that, I'll turn it over to you.
I'll start. Thank you for the extra facts and details. Like, I was not expecting that, and I like numbers, and that was a lot of numbers, and very interesting. The one question that came up for me around this was, could some of these sidewalk funds go towards transportation projects like the Bothell Way widening project? And you answered the question with that lovely graphic, so thank you. And like, can we go back to the slide of 188th? It is amazing. And and because that's in my neighborhood, like, I benefit, my family benefits from that. We saw, like, our kids at Bothell High, as they walk down to the stadium, it's much safer. Having the bike lanes there makes a big difference. And I remember that, and I'm still just blown away by the difference. So thank you for putting that in and to highlight the impact, because it is real. As I have talked to members of the community, I continue to hear that, sidewalks, like safe crossings, are a huge priority. We even heard it tonight in public comment. And so the money has been used well. It has been leveraged for matching funds very well. If I followed your data there, by being able to match, that $93 million could be almost doubled in terms of over the 9-year period, and assuming grants match at the previous rate.
Again, not every dollar that we're going to use will be matching transportation projects. So, but again, assuming that $10 million of that part is eligible for a match, so that means you have $10.5 million more. So in total, that's 20 million and some dollar.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you for breaking that down. I think that's really helpful. With that, I feel confident that in the communications that I've heard from residents that this work should continue. And so I support moving forward with this as a levy. Thank you.
Thank you for going first. I'll go second. I mentioned this to Kyle in our one-on-one, that this is going up with another very needed levy, the MPRSA. And I don't think either one can defer to the other, say, you go this year, we'll go next year. So up front, we need to move forward on this levy. A lot of thoughts. So I was looking at those projects, and I thought, if some of these projects get done before I die, I'm going to die happy. I mean, there's some really good projects that we really have been, the community really wants to see happen. So I appreciate seeing that it continue to stay within, the conscious thinking of this city. I guess the one question, we cannot go campaigning for this. Yes, we can't. Or can we go? We cannot go campaigning.
Yeah, correct. There will be a pro and con committee, and they'll have some ability to do that, whomever is named, and we'll make sure that we have clear guidance on what we can and cannot do. But
So get guidance on whether or not we could have, like, during the summertime events, having an information booth on it, that kind of thing. But we need to make sure that that's okay.
there will be, there may be opportunities for some to do that. It may not be us.
Okay. All right. Well, I have nothing to say except we need to do this, and it's well spent money for the public. The ROI on this tax it comes back in spades, so it's got my support.
Super support it. Great idea. I feel old because I walked on the old 188th in high school to go catch the bus for running start. So I'm glad that there's a sidewalk now. We had talked in some of those study sessions about other funding mechanisms. And I totally understand that, like, putting that in place before the levy renewal was like the timing was not going to work, but those will still be explored.
There's always options for the council can consider. Our recommendation, though, none of them will accomplish what the community has asked. So the prioritization of the types of things that want to see, none of them even come close to being able to support that. So really, instead of trying to piece together some things, this is the clearest thing that if we want the importance of having a clear message to the community of what are we going to do and have the ability to perform it, this is the package of options that we would recommend. Certainly, there's other things in the future that as the council determines the overall financial picture that we need to consider, we can bring back more, and we'll always have a list of things that are options. But this is the one that really accomplishes what the community is asking.
Okay, fair enough. I think this is kind of an adjacent question, but turnout is lower in odd year elections, and we're competing with huge ballots for like local elections. Is this another 9-year thing, like to where it'll be in an even year election if there's like the next renewal?
Yeah, that is one of the tricky things about the 9-year aspect of it. You're absolutely right, but it is, again, it's the timing that we have, and the next time it would look different. But for this, we'll see what the community wants, and we'll hope for Bothell being active civically for sure.
Totally. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Mine's quick. This is something our community wants. We've heard that they're happy with the results they've gotten from the last levy overall. And I am certainly not going to be the one that tells them they can't have this service that they've already voted for. So I appreciate what you brought back. I will acknowledge that if I were the only person in Bothell, this would probably look better. But I think we've done a really good job of bringing something that is what the community wants to see. And I think it's a good thing, and I appreciate all the work that's been done on it already.
Councilmember Kurd, do you want to say anything? Oh, there you go.
Sure, yeah, thank you. Thanks for the presentation and for all the additional background work that went into it, preparing kind of the information that the existing levy has produced and the benefits for our community. I think this is a great deal, and especially maintaining the existing proposed 50-cent rate kind of shows a commitment to continuing the sort of tradition of repair and maintenance and new projects that we've come to expect. So yeah, this has my support.
Thank you. I have a few things I wrote here. I think I'm in agreement in general that we should move forward. I think the decision is going to go to the voters to decide ultimately. So to the mayor's point, it's a no-brainer. Let the voters decide what they want to do. They ask for the services. Hopefully, we can fund it. The one thing I learned when I joined council about 4 years ago is that, contrary to popular belief, there is no money printer in the basement. So we do have to rely on, there's an inherent budgetary problem, financial problem that the city has. They call it structural deficit. And I really commend the finance department under the leadership of the city manager to actually get us in a more stable state so that we can actually look to the future. And this particular issue, this particular case, we do rely on property taxes, but they don't pay enough. So we ask the voters always to go above and beyond what the property tax rate is. And in this case, it funds a very basic need that the people are asking for. And I like the breakdown that we saw. The majority of it is actually forward-looking type projects and getting us ready for the future, so that when the grant opportunities do arise, we are able to jump on them. So yeah, no, thank you. I look forward to putting this on the ballot, and it is a renewal of what we already pay as taxpayers, or property owners, I guess, let's call it that. Property owners, we already pay this levy amount that really helps us get our city, build more sidewalks, maintain or improve the roads that we already use a lot. So I really look forward to seeing the next steps of this particular process and getting it on the ballot soon.
Well, thank you, Council. I think that gives us the direction we need, and we will be back on June 10th with the associated legislation to keep this moving forward. So thank you.
And we are adjourned.